Spain question 1, 2 consequences of. Now, this one isn't actually as tricky as it seems when we first look at the paper, because what it's actually asking us to do is simply point out something that happens as a result of the option that they give you. So let us go and work with the classic example, which really suits the Spanish down to the ground, of the encomienda system. Now, we need 2 consequences. So let's have consequence 1 and consequence 2. First consequence of the encomienda system is that the Spanish had free labour. That's our first consequence. The second consequence is that the indigenous people died. Pretty blunt, pretty obvious. Now, they're not going to give us 8 marks for doing this, but they will give us 4 marks for doing each one in turn. So we need to think about it. So we need to go and start it off. So we're going to say 1 consequence of the encomienda system was that the Spanish had free labour. Okay, 1 mark. For example, now what are we going to say for the example? Well, for the example, what did the Spanish use the free labour for? The Spanish needed labour to get raw materials such as, let's go with gold, from the ground. 1 mark. This meant that, well, what does it mean? They needed to use the indigenous people of the Americas, because remember, of course, this is in the Caribbean as well as Mexico, Peru, all the places that become part of the Spanish New World Empire. So it meant they used the indigenous peoples of the Americas to gain the resources. This isn't the greatest answer, but give you a mark for that one. As a consequence, the Spanish enslaved the indigenous people so that they would work for free and increase Spanish profits from the items obtained. 4 marks. And we do this exact same scenario again with the indigenous people died. Now, obviously, we don't want to repeat what we've got here. So I'm going to just simply break it down like this into our setup. Easy way, of course, to remember this. Name it, describe it, explain it, explain it. I'll just move that up a bit so you can see it a little bit better. So, how are we going to do it? Indigenous people died, name it. describe it. Okay, so Spanish abused indigenous people working in mines. Okay, the encomiendas system didn't promote care for indigenous people. Name it, describe it, explain it. That's explaining why they died. Of course, we know there's things like the law of Burgos that changes it, the new laws, so on and such forth, but it doesn't really ultimately fundamentally change the point. The Spanish indigenous people died more, okay, as a consequence, more indigenous people had to be conquered and enslaved to replace those who died. And of course we know ultimately that one consequence of the encomienda system and the large numbers of deaths of the indigenous people was of course the introduction of African slaves to the New World, facilitated by the likes of people like John Hawkins, who was English. That is simply how we knock out our old friend the two consequence question. It's simple as that.